Hello Aries, and welcome to your in-depth monthly horoscope for April 2023. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you some key features to look out for, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in forensic detail all the ins and outs, particularly relevant to your sign. Now, the Sun is going to merge with the Moon for the second time in your sign this year on the 20th, but this time it's going to be a solar eclipse. This energy will propel itself through the next 6 months. It's also pretty close to Jupiter, which in fact is going to forge a very exciting alliance with your Sun in week 2. I can't wait to share that with you. But that solar eclipse does have a gotcha, so I need to go through that with you. Now, there is a developing energy in the earthy Taurus, and also your ruler Mars is now in the watery Cancer. And those two elements are actually going to come together quite a lot this month. So that's a big change really from recent times. So I need to explore that with you too. Now, if you would like to ascend above this zodiac broadcast, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place of birth, I can give you a life roadmap report which can really help you to understand some of the patterns that have played out throughout your life and get a much more intimate understanding, the more challenging ones, but also the ones that present opportunities. Understanding those patterns is a lot to do with how we can take more control of our lives. And in my special package, you can also get your 12-month personal forecast, and there's 30% off. If you don't know your time, I have designed a new set of charts which can work with that. We don't use the ascendant and we use whole sign astrology, but based on the Sun. And this will help you to reflect in my videos in a very, very positive way. Again, there's 30% off if you have the analysis and the forecast. Please see below for more on that too. So Aries, welcome to your April forecast, and I'd be delighted if you would subscribe. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for joining me once more. So the Sun is going to align with Jupiter, one of the most positive aspects in astrology, exactly on the 11th of this month. Now, the connection between the two of them within 3 degrees actually begins at the start of week 2. But because the sign of Aries is very much about initiation and Jupiter is about being very buoyant and having a lot of self-belief and confidence, it's very good for your physicality, particularly now that Saturn is locked into your 12th house, which obviously is a much more psychological place for it to be. Also, right at the start of this month, Venus and Uranus are in a quick conjunction. It may mean that you make a bit of an impulse purchase right at the start of April. If you do, it's probably good to ensure that it has some kind of practical benefit. But on the 3rd, Mercury makes its way into the sign of Taurus from your sign, and it is going to be squaring up to Pluto in its newly arrived location in the sign of Aquarius. For a couple of days, you may feel a bit uncertain about some kind of financial plan to do with your future. But the first week does see a really sound angle between Mars in Cancer and also Saturn in your 12th house. I think this suggests that something can start to shape up in your thinking, particularly around where you live, that's to do with finding the peace and tranquility that's important to all of us. But you can start putting together some kind of plan or structure, or changing where you're living now, adapting it in some kind of clever way, but using your past experiences and knowledge, perhaps even money that you've accumulated from the past, can see you make some changes around where you live in the here and now. But on the 6th, we do have a full moon in the sign of Libra. The Libra full moon each year is asking us all to think about how we connect to others. Libra is about relating. Now your sign is very much about action and being in the moment. Actually, Jupiter is pretty close to the Sun as the moon goes opposite, which can actually be a really pleasing influence. I think the gotcha on this full moon is actually Uranus, which forges a quincunx to the position of the moon. So that means I feel if there is something that's a bit out of balance around a relationship matter, it could be because your attitude to money may be different to someone you're closely connected to. It doesn't have to be a romantic partner, but it could be someone that you're close to in a friendship, or even perhaps in a work relationship, perhaps even a business partnership. However, what that moon energy can do is get all of us to think about our motivations. And I think for you, it could be that someone's going to remind you that although you may be very focused on a plan or a project that's very important to you, it's important for them to feel part of what you're doing. Now on the 7th, we do have Mercury going into its pre-retrograde shadow. And because it's in the sector of finance, I think it's true to say that you may have to be quite cautious about monitoring the ins and outgoings, particularly around everyday finance. Now Mercury actually goes retrograde proper on the 21st of the month, and it's going to come out of the retrograde in the middle of May and out of the post-retrograde shadow at the end of May. But generally speaking, even though the Sun moves into your second house and gives a lot of support to your attitude and approach to resources, and may even give you some rewards for past hard work, I think generally speaking, particularly from the 16th to the 24th, as Mercury combines with Uranus, there could be some unexpected costs or expenses, or maybe even changes of plan that you need to be mindful of. But that bank of days between the 6th and the 15th, when Jupiter and the Sun come together in such a lovely way, I think that can give you a lot of self-confidence around what you're doing. Also from the 11th, Venus moves into Gemini, where it's very flirtatious, also has a great love of reading. People who have Venus in Gemini are rapacious readers generally, but very good at chatting, and maybe some energy around you with people you link to daily, whether it's neighbours or siblings, that can actually be boosted quite significantly. And because of the trine to Pluto, you're going to have a much deeper appreciation of the relationships you have, which can be good for your heart and soul. But the 20th sees that solar eclipse in your sign, but the gotcha is that it is in a square with Pluto. And the reason for this is that Pluto is in the first minutes of the sign of Aquarius, and the eclipse occurs on the anaretic point in the sign of Aries, so it's nearly in Taurus. So what do we make of this? Well, I feel it's kind of saying to you, you can make progress around your individual plans. Obviously, Jupiter's given you a lot of support even on this eclipse, but you have to be mindful of the politics. And the politics in the sign of Aquarius is about the team. So it's important to balance your individual moves with what is going to work with the people who are in your collective. Now, if you're wanting to be very single-minded, it's possible over the next 6 months that you could break away from some friendships that have actually been in your life for a very long time. Part of the reason for this, potentially, is Saturn's journey through the sign of Pisces. It starts this month, really at the very start of Pisces, but it ends it around about 5 degrees. So it's moving quite quickly, but I think that could see you really thinking very carefully about who serves your greater purpose. Are there some people in your world who weigh you down, who are an onerous influence, who want too much from you? And you may feel that you have to be single-minded and dynamic to make your way forwards. But just remember, as the Sun moves also on the 20th, the same day as the solar eclipse, into Taurus, that Mercury the following day goes into retrograde. So even though you may feel very dynamic and that make you very decisive around a relationship matter, just be aware of trying to keep your feet very much on the ground, because the Mercury retrograde suggests that, being very conscious of resources, but also your self-worth and your values is going to be quite a story towards the end of this month, which is, however, lit up by two glorious influences. One involves your ruler Mars, which links brilliantly to Uranus. So when Mars and Uranus get together, it gives us the encouragement to look at things in a fresh way, but also take the action to be very dynamic and make things happen. So I think you could make some key decisions. Perhaps the Mercury retrograde is going to push you to look at a financial issue in a completely fresh light and shake things up. Now, the Sun is also forging a very strong angle to Saturn as the month draws to a close. And I think essentially what the end of this month's story is about is counting your blessings, seeing the parts of your life that are stable, that are working well, that do give you a sense of security. But there's no doubt about it, with that Jupiter influence threaded through this month, if you want to be more dynamic about a new idea, a new relationship, a fresh approach, or inject an ongoing stream or strand with new vibrancy, you can certainly do it. You just have to be aware that with the retrograde, things could slow down in a way that you aren't quite expecting. And with Uranus spring in some surprises, just be aware of keeping a little bit of your resources back to deal with those. But by the end of this month, you could have worked it all out and be restructuring things in a way which actually sees you feeling really quite content as the curtain comes down on April. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Please comment if you'd like, and please also like and subscribe.